Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is a professional author and an entrepreneur. We have Paul Attaway with us. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you having me on.
Now, you have a book and you are an author. Now, do you have more than one book?
I have one book that is published, and 2 days ago, I finished my first manuscript of my second book.
Okay.
So now I begin the editing process. So come May, I should have 2 books out.
Excellent. All right. So we've talked on the show before about the value of being an author from a business perspective, in terms of gaining credibility and as a marketing tool and things like that. But what you're doing is a little bit different because you have been in business for a very long time. You have a lot of experience as a business professional, but you're doing something different this time.
Yeah, that's true. No, what you've identified is the difference between, say, fiction and nonfiction. And if people asked me when they said I was going to write a book, they said nonfiction. I go, no, I'm not an expert on anything. I could never write a nonfiction book. But in the world of nonfiction, if you're in the business world and you've got an expertise and whatever that expertise might be, writing a book to promote yourself and your area of expertise is a great way to go. Oftentimes people simply use the book almost as a loss leader. It gets them invited to speak at conferences. You grow your customer base, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're really successful, you make money selling the book as well. I'm doing it the other way around. I'm doing it differently. I'm writing nonfiction. I'm making stuff up. And I did it almost as a dare. I started and sold about 3 different businesses. I became a consultant, was a bit burned out on that. I was between gigs and I'd been talking about writing a book. And my wife got so sick and tired of hearing me talk about it. She said, well, please either write this book or shut up and move on. So I said, fine, I'll show you. So I decided to write a book and I did it. And then I go, well, now what do I do? And I had to figure out how to get published, how to sell the book, how to promote the book. And now I've gotten into the whole business side of being an author. And I'm back in the world of small business again. But it's fun. I enjoy it.
Let's talk a little bit more about that, because I think it's fascinating. A lot of people have this idea that if you are going to be an author, right, they look at the people who have kind of become big names and are professional authors who are actually making money from their book. And then when you get a little bit deeper into it, you start to realize that just like everything else in life, most people are not having that experience.
That's correct.
People are not making money from their book. So now because you have some business acumen, realized that's not going to work. So now you're actually making this a business.
Correct. So I'm addressing it now as a business, and I can talk a little bit about the differences between traditional publishing and self-publishing, how you go one route versus the other. And then frankly, at this point, then you really do, the product that I'm selling is me. I'm in my previous careers, I was always selling a product or a service. And so I promoted the product, I promoted the service, I promoted the team of people around us, et cetera. And so now I had to promote myself. I'm the brand. I'm the writer. I'm a guest speaker. I'm becoming an expert on American history in Charleston, which is where I live, so I can give tours, et cetera. So yes, when you write a book, assuming it takes you a year and a half to get a book published, well, that means your customer, your clients, your customers, your fans who enjoy your books, they won't hear from you for a year and a half. Well, if you're John Grisham or James Patterson or Karen White, one of these other very successful authors, you have a built-in fan base. They will wait for your next book. When that book comes out, they buy it. But if that's not you, or if you're hopefully going to get there, between now and there, you have to constantly have contact with your potential customers. So I've recently started a newsletter that will focus on the city of Charleston and history, and also, my worldview on a few things. I'm becoming an expert in history so that I can give walking history tours of Charleston, which is actually, they're a lot of fun to both do and go on. And I'm active on Instagram. So I'm trying to grow my base of potential readers while I'm writing the book, so that when my book comes out, they'll go, I've seen this guy, I saw him on a podcast, I read his newsletter. I'm going to give his book a chance. So it is a constant process of nurturing a customer base.
I love that. And that is so applicable to virtually any business. These are fundamental principles we're talking about here: marketing, sales. You do have to have that consistent touch point with your clients and customers. And there are plenty of people who are in business who are not doing some of these fundamental things. And that's where you see people kind of on like the feast or famine roller coaster. They do a little bit of marketing, maybe get a little bit of, money flowing into the business, and then get, lose that consistency, lose that momentum. And
yeah,
cycle.
I think also you're very true. And when I first started out in the business world, well, you go back far enough, and I was a lawyer for a whopping 2 years. Then I realized being a lawyer wasn't for me. And I moved into the world of small business. I went to work for my father. And so he was in the world of construction. And he manufactured building materials for commercial construction. So I learned that business. I had worked for him in the summer out in the shop and things like that. But then I really found out what my dad did when I went to work for him. And his expenditures were capital expenditures. You only bought it, the contractor only bought it when they were building a building. He knew who his customer was. He knew who the contractor was. There was one way to go to market. He had sales reps, and you attended these 5 or 6 trade shows, and this was the magazine you advertised in. That was it. And then you would invite your sales reps and your big customers out. Maybe you take them to dinner. Maybe you'd go on a fishing expedition. But it's very simple. Okay. Today, it seems like more and more businesses are built not on selling the razor, but on selling the razor blade. Subscription models, services, where you're constantly, the barriers of entry into so many businesses are so low that your customers can be taken like that. Loyalty isn't what it used to be. Money and people can move so fast that if you're not constantly retaining your customers and trying to find new ones, they're going to be gone before frankly, by the time it might be too late. So yes, maintaining and nurturing your customers, it strikes me, it is a nonstop battle these days.
Let's talk a little bit about your book, because there are going to be people who are going to say, all right, well, this sounds interesting. Tell me more.
Well, it's so when I sat down to write a book, I decided, well, first thing I ought to do is go read how to write a book. I mean, I was a finance major in college. I haven't had an English class, and I can't remember when, but I do enjoy reading, and I enjoy writing. I joke I learned to write when I was in law school. I'd start off, I'd write 20 pages. By the time I was done, it'd be down to 10. I had a really good mentor my first year of law school. So I decided I'd start reading books on how to write a book, and I'd read blogs on how to write books. There is an entire cottage industry supporting people who want to become an author. So there's plenty of resources out there, and you'll find a lot that are repetitive. You'll find some that are a waste of time, but you'll find a lot of really good stuff as well. So some of the sound advice I received was, write what you know. I grew up in Atlanta, born and raised in the South. I understand what it means to grow up in the South. Okay, I was born in 1963, so I understood the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. I had a great relationship with my father. He passed away way too early, passed away in 96. So father-son relationships were something that I am a father, I am a son, I have siblings. So I felt I could write about father-son relationships. So that was the genesis of my book. And at that point, then I'm writing and I'm writing and I'm writing these scenes and I was struggling. I couldn't come up with I just was like, what the hell did I get myself into? And I was introduced to a gentleman who's a bit older. He had retired from a career as a film editor. And we were having dinner with this gentleman and his wife. My wife and I had just met them. And he asked me, he said, what's your book about? And so I struggled to even answer the question. And he kind of put me on hold. He said, if I could offer you some advice. I said, please. He said, stop trying to write a book. He says, you'll never do it if you try to write a book from beginning to end. He said, just start writing, and you'll piece the scenes together later on. So the next day I went back to work, so to speak, my job, writing, and he was right. And I began to write. And I did. After about 5 days, I had about 10,000 words written. I thought, okay, I can do this. And that was really what got me started. So the story, it's set in Charleston, South Carolina in the 1970s. We have a husband and a wife. They have 2 sons. One is theirs. The oldest is the mother's son from a previous marriage. And everything seems fine. The father, the protagonist, he's a small-time attorney. He's an attorney in a small town, not small time, but small town. And then there's a murder in their community that turns everything upside down. And the story then is what this man will do, is willing to do in order to keep his family together and save his family when it looks like he's this close to losing everything. So pure fiction, little murder mystery family drama, but it was a lot of fun to write.
And what is the title?
The title is Blood in the Low Country.
All right. And is it safe for me to assume that if someone wants to purchase a copy of that, they can get it from your website?
You can go to my website. Yes, you can buy it there, but you can also, it's available at Amazon. And so Barnes and Noble ebook version, Amazon, paperback, hardback, and of course the Kindle version. And if you're into audiobooks, it's available as an audiobook as well.
Excellent. And you self-published this, correct?
That's correct. Right.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So once I finished the book, then I had to figure out, now what do I do? So I went hunting again online for advice and input. And there's basically, there's 2 ways to go. You can be traditionally published or self-published. To be traditionally published, you have to find an agent. The agent will then take you and vet you and take you to the publishing houses and try to get you a contract. And then the publisher will distribute your book through bookstores, and they'll do some advertising for you, et cetera. So first step is you write a letter. It's called a query letter to the agent, and you can learn how to do this online. And then what you're told is to wait patiently. And the agent will either not get back to you or say no. Some of them might say yes, but it's extremely difficult to get an agent to pick you up. So if you don't get picked up by an agent, you're never going to get picked up by a large publishing house. Then there is a second route. You can go directly to smaller publishing houses. They will accept a manuscript directly from an author. I did that route. I had better success. I had a few small publishing houses say they would take me on. But at the same time, I began to investigate self-publishing. So self-publishing, there are a dozen or more companies out there that will take you on. They'll do your cover design for you, your interior design. They'll help you get up on Amazon. They'll help you get available to bookstores through a company called Ingram Spark. They'll do all that work for you so that you can be published. Well, once you're published, it simply means it's available to be purchased. You still have to tell the world that your book is available. You still have to market and sell. So I went down the road with one of these self-publishing companies. And my first experience with one was very negative. The book cover design just was not very good. So I took a step back and I started over again. And I put together myself a team of experts that I found, a consultant who told me everything I needed to know about publishing, a book cover designer. I have since assembled a wonderful advertising team, a PR person, and a social media person. So I now have surrounded myself with people that are experts at what they do. They're very good at what they do. And between us as a team, we get the book designed and reduced to the proper electronic file format. And then we upload it to Amazon, we upload it to Ingram Spark. It's now available to be purchased from libraries, bookstores, and of course online. And then the rest of the team helps me put together an advertising and a PR campaign to promote the book. It's an interesting process. And if there's anyone out there listening that's always wanted to write a book or think they've got one done, they're ready to publish, if you reach out to me at my website and make contact, I'd be more than happy to go into greater detail about each step and what I learned, what I would do over again, and mistakes that I would not make, hopefully the second time.
One of the things that I have to ask, because regardless of the topic, regardless of the guest, we talk about mindset. So you had to go through a few obstacles, we'll say, to step into this new role as the professional author and to really take on this mindset of this is my business. I'm curious if there is maybe one thing that you would feel inspired to share with us about something with your own mindset that you had to overcome to get to where you are today.
One thing. I think all of us at a certain level live in fear of something. That could be fear of not being perceived the way we want to be perceived, fear that we're not successful in the eyes of people that we think, whose opinion we think is important. And so, when you're working in a business, you're selling a product or a service or something, and there's a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of different things between you and the customer, et cetera, but you still want to be successful. You still want to do a good job. As an author, this is my working copy. This is you. Everyone's going to read this and they're going to go, I know this guy. Or they don't know you. And they're going to go, this guy's a terrible writer. I can't believe he thought he could write a book. And so the fear of being out there and having, and they go, I wrote this. I had to realize at the end of the day, if people read my book and thought I was a lousy writer, that it made absolutely no difference at all. At the end of the day, my value, the value I have in this world, is a function of who I am. And you ask a question, so I'll answer it. We all have one thing in common. We're all created by the same God, and our value is a function of the fact that He made us in His image, and He said we're very good. So that's my worldview. And I had to get really comfortable with the idea that at the end of the day, if this book bombed, my wife would still love me. My kids would still think I was goofy and wonderful. My friends would say, all right, nice try, Attaway. No big deal. You're still a good guy. That was the part that I had to really get comfortable with, was that if it doesn't work out, it's okay. And I think a lot of us hold back from pursuing something that we would like to pursue because it's new, we've never done it, and consequently, we could fail, so to speak. And that is that's a scary place to be. I had to get beyond that.
I really love that you shared that. And it's absolutely true. In fact, when I'm working with my clients, one of the things that I frequently have to do, especially when they're setting these new goals for themselves in their business and in their life, the subconscious mind doesn't have a frame of reference for that. So that's when all those fears kick up and all those insecurities kick in. And we do need to make peace with the what if.
Yep.
We need to get okay with that, because when we don't, the fear will stop us. And if you can be aligned with what you want to create, be willing to go for it, and be willing to be okay if it doesn't work out, it puts you in a position where now you're not fighting against yourself, or at least not as much as you would be if you had all of those unresolved, unaddressed fears.
Right. So I think what you're recognizing, or what you're pointing out, is that that we can look at any unknown, we can assess it, and we can rationalize all the reasons I shouldn't do this. Now, some of those might be good business decisions. My expenses exceed my revenues. I shouldn't do this. But oftentimes, what we're really simply doing is we're putting a nice dress on our fears, and we're using that. And as long as those are there, we're never going to go all in. We're never going to go all in. And I had that experience. I was, like I said, I was between consulting gigs when I started this book, and I was sort of struggling with it, and like, where's this going? And someone called me up and said, "Hey, Paul, there's this company. I think you might be able to help them out a little bit." So I talked to them, and I got hired on as an executive for hire for a project. So I leaped at it because I knew how to do it. I said, I can do that with my eyes closed. So for the next 18 months, I did that, and my book languished. I wrapped up the project, and I started taking on other possible projects that people were asking me about. And I finally got to the point, I had narrowed it down to 2 possible jobs, 2 more projects. Both of them said no. And at first I was hurt because I can't believe they didn't want to hire me. And then I realized what a blessing it was, because I'm like, well, if I'm going to give this writing a real opportunity, I have to go all in. So I said, that's it. I'm going all in on this. And having those 2 people not offer me the position we've been talking about was the best thing to have happened, because it basically left me out there. I'm like, well, this is what I'm going to do. I got another phone call from somebody else. I said, thank you, but no thank you. I'm not even going to entertain a meeting. And I went all in, and 6 months later, I'd finished it. And so, yeah, it really took being put into a position where I had to go all in. And once I did, it became much easier.
That decision point is so crucial, so incredibly crucial, because you still have all the work that you've got to do after that, the inner work and the outer work. But none of that work even starts until you make that commitment to go for it. So, Paul, can you tell our listeners how they can connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest way, excuse me, is just my website, which is paulattaway.com, and that's ATTAWAY. That's also my Facebook page, which is author Paul Attaway. My Instagram is Instagram Paul Attaway, but all that's available at the website. From there, you can learn about my book. You can learn about the next book that's coming up. You can sign up for my newsletter. Everything you need to know is right there at paulattaway.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Paul. This has been a great conversation. A lot of takeaways, even for individuals who maybe have not considered being a professional author.
Yeah.
Great conversation.
Never too late. Never too late. Well, thank you, Alicia. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners. If you haven't already subscribed, please make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.